This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and struggles, whether it's before COVID-19, during COVID-19, or after COVID-19. We're still all about hormone balancing. And as luck would have it, if you're working on your immune boosting, you're also working on your hormone balancing. And the silver lining for those of us in midlife is that we may actually come out of this better than we went in. And my guest is going to help you focus on hormone balance today. And before we go there, I want to make sure that you know this episode is brought to you by the Flipping 50 Fitness Specialist, because it's never been more important that the world we live in, with 46 million women in menopause right now and 6,000 more entering menopause every day, have a special exercise support in their personal trainer or their health coach who understands the difference between traditional conventional exercise, which can make you feel worse, and hormone balancing fitness, whether you're in perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause. And I'll link to the opportunity for you or for your personal trainer or your health coach to gain more knowledge about the Flipping 50 Fitness Specialist in this episode. And if you're already working with someone, you can, or if you aren't already working with someone, you can check to find out if they've done the Flipping 50 Fitness Specialist and are a hormone balancing expert, or find one in your area, because we have a directory. And I'll link to that again in the show notes. And now let's dive in. How would you like to spend some time with an OBGYN who gets it? Someone who can tell you how to boost energy, lose weight, and have the energy and vitality you want. One who tells it like a girlfriend because she's been there. Well, the doctor is making a house call. In our case, a walking appointment, because I know from your comments and iTune ratings that you're on the move while you're listening. My guest today is Dr. Kyrin Dunston, leading by example. She lost a life-changing 100 pounds and healed herself from chronic disease by addressing the root causes of her overweight and dysfunction. This personal transformation, in turn, caused a professional one, and she left OBGYN practice in 2011 to pursue helping women heal with this revolutionary type of natural medicine after becoming fellowship trained in anti-aging, metabolic, and functional medicine. Dr. Dunstan has been board certified in OBGYN for over 20 years and is fellowship trained in anti-aging, metabolic, and function medicine by the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. She received her Bachelor of Science in Psychology at Bryn Mawr College, received her degree in her doctorate in medicine from Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia, and completed her residency in OBGYN at the Medical Center of Delaware. And she resides in Georgia with her two dogs, Otis and Carly. Dr. Dunstan, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Deborah.
And is it true for you as well as it is for me that those dogs are actually helping keep you sane right now?
Absolutely. They are my grounders and my uplifters. And, they set the tempo for my daily routine. And they're just so loving unconditionally and a joy, and they're an ever constant source of amusement. So yes, they are helping me stay sane.
Well, and I love that little small phrase, but so huge that you put in there, grounding you into routine, because I would say that the resounding challenge that I find among all of our Flipping 50 community members are there's a lack of routine. There's a feeling for inconsistency, in all the uncertainty, and having a routine is oh so important. So give me your thoughts and what you're hearing from your audience on that.
Yes, the lack of routine and the lack of the touchstones that remind us who we are, the places we go, the people we interact with on a daily basis, the activities that we participate in. These are all a part of who we are. And when we do those routinely, we're reminded of who we are. And that's very grounding. We feel like we have purpose and connection, and all that's been kind of taken away. And we're becoming overly familiar with our homes. And so what I'm hearing from people is that they're feeling very ungrounded right now. And so whatever ways you can find to reground yourself, I think are essential, whether it's pets or connecting with friends in different ways and not having social distancing, but physical distancing and maintaining social contact, and really trying to stay rooted in those aspects of our communities that remind us who we are, will really help people to feel more grounded and stable.
Love that. And I also, huge thanks to you, because this is actually part of my grounding. So this is obviously, I mean, this is communicating and I'm benefiting, and I know that our listeners are, and I'm experiencing the same thing. So when I'm not interviewing people, I find myself listening to more podcasts during this time than I have in a long time, and looking for ways to just maybe explore and expand ideas, but also, and not necessarily COVID-19. In fact, I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to hear about that. I want a little normalcy in my life. Somebody tell me a joke, right?
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah. Just staying connected with people, doing interviews is great. And laughter is so, studies have shown that if you purposefully laugh, even if you don't have something to laugh about, that you increase the same happy hormones that you do if you were laughing at something organically. So I have to go online for my daily dose of laughter, and I love silly animal videos. So I have to watch those and just laugh. There really is so much joy and beauty in the world that hasn't changed, even though we have this one particular challenge. And so just reveling in that, reveling in nature and laughter and people, I think is so essential. It's really making me sane.
Yeah, I love that. And you have a great laugh, by the way. As soon as you were laughing, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. All right. So it's contagious in a good way. You're classically trained, as an OBGYN. How did you come to understand the central role of hormonal health and hormone balance in our health? Because our members know I'm talking about that constantly in regards to exercise and what your real goal is that. But where did that become? This is the core of what you do.
Well, it's interesting because as a classically trained OBGYN, I wasn't trained or taught to check hormone levels or really see that as the center of health. I was really taught to put Band-Aids on symptoms using pharmaceuticals, and then also use surgery when that didn't work. And it wasn't until I had my own health challenges where I became obese. I weighed 243 pounds, and I had fibromyalgia. I had chronic fatigue. I had depression, anxiety. My hair was falling out. I had no sex drive. You name it, I kind of had it. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong, why I had these problems, or seem to fix them in any substantial way. And I became open to learn other methods. And then through a series of what I consider to be miraculous events, I discovered functional medicine, which is really root cause resolution medicine that looks at the underlying cause of problems. And so when I discovered this, the first things that I learned about were special hormone tests that I didn't know about as a board certified OBGYN. I learned special tests to look at the thyroid that we didn't use. And so I discovered that even though I had checked my thyroid at least 10 times and it was quote unquote normal, that I actually was hypothyroid when I did the right tests and I read them the right way. And so this started my eyes opening to the central nature of hormone balance for overall health. And when I started addressing it, I started having a little more energy. I started feeling a little better and the weight started coming off. And then at the same time, I also did hormone testing for sex hormones. So I looked at my estrogen levels and progesterone and testosterone, and I discovered that I had a progesterone deficiency. Well, nothing I had learned in 4 years of OBGYN residency had taught me to look at sex hormones. We just placated them with birth control pills. And so when I discovered this, I said, oh my gosh, well, if I'm having this problem and all my patients are middle-aged women with the similar symptoms, I bet they're having these problems. And so I discovered that replenishing the progesterone to an appropriate level further increased my energy, started the weight coming off even more. And then finally, I learned about cortisol, which in mainstream training, I was taught that rarely did someone have a cortisol problem, and you only checked those levels if you suspected that someone had a disease like Addison's or Cushing's, where they're in the top or bottom 2.5% of cortisol values. And that basically it didn't matter if they were in the rest of that 95 percentile bell curve. And then I discovered in functional medicine that nothing could be further from the truth, that your cortisol levels are vital for your weight levels, for your energy levels, your sleep-wake cycle, your immune system function, whether you get sick or not, like whether you're susceptible to a viral illness and how severe it is, or whether you get cancer or not. And when I did my salivary cortisol testing, I had discovered that I had a flat line. And so even though I didn't have a disease and I was surviving, I was barely doing so. So my body only had reserves to keep everything functioning. And this is why I was kind of walking through like a zombie through life. And so these were my first experiences with functional medicine, Deborah. And this clearly taught me the central nature of hormone balance to overall health, because the strides that I had in my health improvement from checking these hormones and addressing why they were out of balance was huge. And then my journey just continued from there.
So what's really the difference between, say, a traditional approach to hormone management and a functional approach to hormone management?
So a traditional approach is basically aimed at one, symptom management. Well, first, I'd say disease diagnosis, number one. So what? They're concerned with what? What disease does someone have? What diagnosis do they have? And what drug do I need to give, or what surgery do I need to do to fix it? Fix the symptom disease diagnosis. So I think examples speak better to people. So let's give an example. So if someone comes in with symptoms of low thyroid, maybe they're lethargic, constipated, hair falling out globally, so not in patches usually. Maybe they're depressed or anxious. These are some classic symptoms of low thyroid function. The doctor might check a test called a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. That's the hormone the brain makes to tell the thyroid to function. And what they're looking for is thyroid disease. So for you to be diagnosed with a the disease of hypothyroidism, low functioning thyroid, generally your TSH has to be above at least 4.5 to 5.5. And if you have that diagnosis, then they're going to say, what drug do I need to give you? So they're going to give you typically Synthroid, which is a synthetic form of T4, which is the inactive form of the thyroid hormone. And then they're just going to monitor you to make sure your TSH comes into the normal range. And then they're going to consider that quote unquote cured, right? Now, a functional approach is if you come in having all of these symptoms. So first off, we know that it's not just thyroid that determines these symptoms. You know, usually there are multi factors into any given symptom, like chronic constipation or global hair loss or fatigue or anxiety or depression. So we're going to cast a wider net in looking for the causes, because we're concerned with why somebody has the symptoms they have. We're not just interested in what is the diagnosis. We're interested in why. And then we're going to do 8 different tests on your thyroid, looking at all the individual parts of how your thyroid works. We're not only going to look at the TSH that the brain makes to tell the thyroid to function, but we're going to look at the T4, both free and total fractions. That's the inactive hormone that the thyroid makes. And then we're going to look at the T3, which is the active form that it has to be transformed into. We're going to look at both total T3 and free T3. And we're going to look at reverse T3, which is an abnormal form of T3 that your body can make when it's under stress and cortisol levels are high, that can actually sit on the thyroid hormone receptors and block healthy T3 from sitting on them and stimulating them properly. We're going to look at antibodies to the thyroid peroxidase antibody, antithyroglobulin antibody, because people can have antibodies. Their immune system can be making antibodies to their thyroid years before they ever have a thyroid disease. And you want to know this ahead of time so that you can get on top of it and prevent it. So we're going to take a more global approach. We'll probably also look in someone who's having those symptoms at their cortisol levels, their sex hormone levels, and their insulin levels. And then once we see the picture of where someone is, we're going to be looking not do you have a disease, but are you at optimal function, which is different than are you normal? So you can have quote unquote normal thyroid function and not be optimal. So optimal is what someone at their peak of health, say, remember how you were at 20 and you felt great and vital and alive and energetic and everything was functioning well. That's the levels we want to compare you with, because you should still have those same optimal levels of thyroid function at 50, 60, 70 that you did at 20. There's no reason that you shouldn't unless there are underlying causes that you're not addressing. So normal is defined by the lab as what 95% of the population has. Well, you can look at Americans, 60% of us are overweight or obese. And so therefore we're not optimally healthy. And so they're taking those values from all Americans and saying it's normal for you to have this thyroid level. Even though you don't have a disease, it's considered normal. However, it's not optimal. So optimally, we know your TSH should be between 1 and 2. And if it's over 2 and you don't have a disease, so you're not at 4.5 or 5.5, you're going to feel pretty crappy, right? You're not going to have great energy. You're probably going to be gaining weight. You might be constipated and have some of these other symptoms that we're talking about. And so we're always going to be looking at why. And so if you're at, say, 3 with your TSH, we look at all your other parameters, and then we support the thyroid in doing what it needs to do, because all of your cells depend on messages from the thyroid. Hormones are communicators in your body. They send messages to your cells and tell them how to function. And so we're going to help it to do that better. And we're going to ask, why is your thyroid low functioning? Is it because your stress hormone cortisol is high and it's interfering? Is it because your insulin's out of balance? That could be another reason, because all these hormones act in harmony together and they will pull each other off when there's an imbalance. And we're going to ask, are you nutrient deficient? Do you have the proper iodine to make thyroid hormone? Each molecule of hormone requires 4 iodine molecules. So are you iodine deficient, which is fairly common in America because we don't get enough in our diet, and you can get great resources in sea vegetables, which is not a staple of the American diet like seaweed. Are you deficient in selenium or the other nutrients that go into making thyroid hormone? And then, like I said, we're going to look at the other hormones to see if they're interfering with proper thyroid hormone production. And, I always say that these hormone imbalances are like ants. There's never just one. You have to look at all of them together. There are usually way more imbalances. And then when you balance all of them, these hormones start working together to support each other and improve overall health instead of dragging each other down. And so that's the essential difference between an allopathic traditional approach and a functional approach.
Okay, so much here to unpack, and bear with me while I phrase this right. But I completely hear how the way of testing is unique and what we're looking for is unique. So now on the flip side, let's say you find out, there's an imbalance or multiple, because that's logical. What's the difference between the way of treating? What happens first for you? Because clearly, diet and nutrition and sleep and stress and exercise come into play. Can someone completely naturally, without hormone replacement, for instance, or thyroid medication, heal themselves? Or is that a unique to the individual situation?
That is a great question, Deborah. There is a lot you can do with inputs like lifestyle and diet. You can improve your diet, decrease toxins coming into your body, decrease your toxicity, do a detox. You can exercise, it goes a long way to improving overall health. So there's a lot you can do on your own. But beyond that, it becomes very individual. If the imbalances are mild and they're not that entrenched and longstanding, I've seen people completely reverse these types of things on their own, using the measures we've talked about and maybe adding some supplements and nutritionals and botanicals and things like that. But there are other people who are going to need some assistance to correct these, which may or may not involve medications. I try to fix things as naturally as possible without going to medications when I work with clients one-on-one or in groups. But sometimes you need a medication. And it's nice to have that option to prescribe it if it's needed. But we try to avoid it because the body really does want to heal itself. And so my very simplistic philosophy, I know I gave a lot of information before, but simply it is get the bad stuff out, get the good stuff in, and balance everything, because the body is made to heal itself. Just think about if you cut your arm, it mobilizes its forces to heal that cut. And so when healing's not occurring naturally, say there's a thyroid imbalance that's not correcting, what that means is that there are things that are interfering. So that's bad stuff, interfering with normal thyroid function. Not enough of the good things, nutrients and other factors that we need to boost healing and improve thyroid function. And there's some imbalance in there. So it's pretty simplistic if you think about it like that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love kind of the latitude that it gives a listener to know, if I need extra help, it's okay. I'm going to do everything I can, but it's not a sign of weakness to need an extra kick. Or there are a lot of things that I have some responsibility to do for myself in order to see if I can improve it simply with my lifestyle. So I love that. I want to address one thing that both for me and for my listeners, I think this is still a source of confusion. If you have thyroid problems and you need thyroid medication, is that once you go on, you're never coming off situation or not?
Not necessarily. If you correct the underlying imbalances that are causing you to have the low thyroid function, then you could come off of the replacement. But what often happens is that people don't do the work to uncover the underlying causes, and therefore their thyroid never naturally improves. And so they do end up being on it forever. I love the example of diabetes. I think it's a beautiful example. It's a similar type of situation. Diabetics are traditionally told in mainstream medicine that once you have diabetes, you'll always have diabetes. You're always going to have to check your blood pressure and your blood sugar and have blood work done periodically to manage it. And you're going to be on medications. But the truth is that when you're first diagnosed, if you're a type 2, I'm not talking about type 1 diabetes where you don't have any ability to produce insulin. In type 2, you have the ability to produce it. It's just become ineffective or you don't make as much as you should. There are so many things. Diet and exercise and supplements can completely reverse diabetes, and you do not have to have diabetes. And I'd say that people are they're more familiar with diabetes. They're more familiar with people reversing diabetes. And so they're more willing to do the work. And it also doesn't require that much digging for underlying causes as it does with hypothyroid, because it's very clear that most people are type 2 diabetic because of their lifestyle, lack of exercise, and too much caloric input of certain types. And so it's pretty simple. People get it and they can do this on their own. But when it comes to thyroid, it usually does require some assistance to do the digging that is necessary to uncover those causes. And so it's not so simple that you just need to change your diet and exercise. There usually are special tests that need to be done to look at your nutrient reserves and what you're lacking. And I find that with most of my hypothyroid clients, there's almost always a cortisol issue, the stress hormone. And that definitely requires somebody to help you untangle, because it can be extremely complicated. And I don't know, we might have time to get into that. I don't want to overload listeners, but you can get off of thyroid hormone replacement. And one thing I want people to understand is I've heard some people say that they think that the thyroid hormone replacement is causing their thyroid to malfunction and making it so that they'll always become dependent on it. And that is not the case. Once you come off of it, your own thyroid function comes back to whatever level it can sustain. I hope that makes sense.
That makes great sense. So let's backtrack just a little bit. So can you get into a bit of unraveling that cortisol issue, given the moment we're in? You know, a woman may have 8 weeks ago felt like, cortisol is an issue. I've got some stress, but now that's compounded. We're in it. And, there's not just the cortisol of everyday life. There's the cortisol of everyday life in COVID, not knowing when we're coming out and what else is going on. So I think everybody can feel a little bit of that.
Yes, I think we are in an emotionally stressful time right now, globally. And that is one aspect of your cortisol, your stress hormone. So when people think of stress, they usually think of psychosocial stressors, difficult emotions, difficult situations, and that is part of it. And that's actually why I just created a download for people on essential self-care for brilliant health resilience during this time, where the first thing I talk about is your energetic hygiene, which has to do with the intangibles of your life, your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and connection to something greater than you are, and goes through some stress management tips. So that is vital. I'd say that what really helped me initially, because I didn't take it seriously and kind of dismissed it. It's just another flu. And then when I realized, no, this is a serious, different threat, I kind of started binging on news and stories that had a lot of emotional content. And it really didn't serve me, because it took me to a very dark place. And I had to slap myself in the face and say, wait a minute, I have a choice as to what I dine on with my thoughts and where I put my attention. What you focus on expands. And so I put myself on a strict diet of getting credible information once daily so that I know what actions to take. And then the rest of the time, I dine on what's to be grateful for and beautiful in this world, which is so much. And so really having that hygiene around where you put your thoughts and your attention and what you're doing with your energetic self. And I think that's so vital at this time. And to remember that when you're in fear, you're really looking at your power to control the things that you can sense with your five senses. And you're not putting your faith in something greater than yourself, which, unless you believe that we, that not everything happens for no reason and that there's no order to the universe. And, I don't know what everyone's personal belief is, but I believe there is some order and something greater than myself that's gotten me through instances like the one that I described where my health was really in the toilet. There's something that led me to the information that led to my ultimate health and healing. And I believe that that force exists for all of us. So I'd say that's number one. But I think what's important is to remember that there are other stressors that your cortisol is looking at that are going to affect your health and immune system. So the second place is blood sugar stress. Your blood sugar goes up every time you eat, even if you're eating low sugar foods. Every food has a certain degree of sugar in it, or glucose. And so it's going to affect your blood sugar. And the higher your blood sugar goes up and the faster it goes up, the more it will go down and the more rapidly it will go down. And when you're eating high carb foods, high sugar foods on a regular basis, bread, pasta, potatoes, rice, or sugar, then you're on what I call the blood sugar roller coaster, and you're going up and down, up and down. Well, every time that blood sugar comes down, your cortisol becomes stressed because your glucose is your main fuel source. And your body knows that if your main fuel source goes away, you will die instantly. And so that is a stressor. Your life feels threatened. Your body feels threatened when your glucose comes down rapidly and too far. And so you've got to get off the blood sugar roller coaster to balance out your cortisol. So eat slow carbs, vegetables, not so much grains, and definitely avoiding sugars. Helps you to get off the blood sugar roller coaster and stop stressing your cortisol. And then the last place that your body gets stressed to the cortisol is inflammation in the body. And that can come from chemical toxins, so pesticides in your food. I definitely recommend you eat organic, artificial colorings, flavorings. It can come from home construction chemicals like formaldehyde and VOCs, volatile organic compounds. It can come from furnishings in your home that have these artificial chemicals in them that will off gas for up to 2 years after you put the furnishings in your home. It can come from carpet. It can come from your cleaning products, your cosmetics, your toiletries. So we're really inundated in this sea of chemicals. There have been 85,000 new chemicals introduced into our environment since the 1950s. And the average person has traces of 400 toxic chemicals in her body. So you've got to stop these toxins from coming into your body, and you have to usher them out through your main sanitation department, which is your liver, because otherwise that's the bad stuff that's inside of you that's clogging up the machinery and preventing your cells from working properly and healing. And then you can also have biologic toxins in the body. And those would be chronic viral infections, bacterial infections, parasites, and fungi like Candida. And so this is where it really gets that you need help navigating this, because the average person isn't going to know how to decipher and needs a test to identify, do I have mold? Maybe do I have Candida? Do I have VOCs? Do I have toxic levels of plastic byproducts like phthalates? So this is where it really needs an experienced eye to navigate and do testing and then help you divest your body of these things. But these are the three categories where your cortisol is looking. Do I need to be stressed? It's constantly surveilling the environment. Are there chemicals I need to be stressed about? Are there abnormal bacteria and viruses? Is there blood sugar stress? Is there something to fear outside of me, like the virus? And so you've got to kind of address all of these areas to bring your cortisol into balance.
Yeah, I love that comprehensive view. And I think, that may have been a lot, listener.
Yeah.
So walking around the block, you probably had to do another lap there, but this would definitely be worth a second listen. I think the most valuable piece is there are a lot of moving parts. So if you're attempting to make changes in your life and you've started an exercise program, or you've begun to eat more healthfully or attempted both, and yet you're still not seeing progress. I think the message that I want you to get is there's hope because you haven't yet unturned every rock. If you're having a lack of progress or sensing that you're not getting anywhere, there's more to it. And yet by simply learning more about the pieces, then it will begin to make more sense that you didn't get here immediately or overnight. And the progress that you're going to have maybe happening under the other hood, or you may need a little bit more help to fully discover what it is with the correct testing, for instance. So, Dr. Dunstan, I'm going to let you say, yes, that was a great summary, or add to it.
Oh, that was a great summary. And I think that anybody listening, it was a lot of information. Rewind, re-listen. And this is why I talk about these things every week on my Her Brilliant Health Revolution podcast, because it takes repetition and it takes hearing it from different experts from different aspects and picking up pieces here and there. But I always tell my clients, there is always a reason. If you are having negative health symptoms, there is always a reason. Do not listen to practitioners who tell you that's normal for your age. That's not true. It's a lie. You should feel great at 50, 60, 70. You really should. Energized, great sex drive, great hair. You should just feel and look wonderful. And if you are not feeling like yourself, if you're feeling like a stranger in your own skin and you're doing the things that Deborah talks about and you're exercising, you're eating right, and you're taking supplements, then seek out other information and help to uncover your personal reasons, because there's always a reason and it's probably very unique to you, as unique as your fingerprint.
So good. All right. So I am really excited about your new self-care gift. Is that ready yet? Or by the time we potentially publish this and release this episode, it may be. Where can listeners go find that?
They can find it. It'll be available on my website, which is KyrinDunstonMD.com, and it's KyrinDunstonMD.com. It'll be available there, as well as some of the other gifts. I have a special one, though, I wanted to share with your audience that they can't just get on my website, which is the meditation for brilliant hormone balance. It's a 20-minute guided meditation that I created to help people with their cortisol. So right about now, we're all needing that. And it takes you through a guided visualization to actually help to balance all of the hormones. So I hope that you'll really enjoy that.
Yeah, I love that one too. And I think so appropriate for right now. And in listeners, if you're out there thinking, oh, I don't meditate, give it a try. I mean, this is the perfect time to just be open-minded, give it a try, see how it feels. You never know. And listeners, if you have a question and I missed it, please leave it below the show link. And that'll be at flipping50.com/Dr. Dunstan. And if this was helpful, please leave a rating in iTunes. It really helps. Let's spread the word that you don't have to settle after 50. And what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.